Okay, let's do some 10 questions then. And again,
Okay.
some of these are awful because they're so tough.
Nah,
um, but if favorite Tom Petty album, if you can only pick, you absolutely can only pick one, what's your favorite?
I guess after a lot of, internal debate and so, well, I'll just say that it would be between the I'll tell you who the finalists would be.
Yeah.
It would be between Full Moon Fever and She's the One. And I guess I would pick Full Moon Fever just because yeah, that's the champion fighter for song.
Yeah.
I don't know if it can be beat. I don't, any shortcomings of the sound or anything like that, I think disappear with the strength of those songs.
Yeah. It's an astonishing record. It really is. I mean, like I said, I've talked about this a lot. I just, until I sat down and listened to it with the analytical ear, I didn't realize how dense that album is because it all sounds so simple. But pretty much every song's got at least three guitars,
Yeah,
sometimes four, sometimes five. Like it's
you're
an
right.
incredible piece of production. Like I said, aesthetic aside, Jeff Lynne did an amazing job with those songs, but the songs themselves are just incredible. And they just, again, I think like the Wilburys, from what I understand from Tom reading about Paul Zollo's book and whatever, most of those songs came very quickly.
Yeah,
So
I
to
think
have
that's right.
that be the output from that is just that's just something special. But she's the one I'd noticed that when we were chatting a little bit back and forth. I think that's such an underappreciated album. I think that one and Echo are probably the two in Tom's catalog that people don't always pay enough attention to because, and I hadn't either because I thought, oh, it's a soundtrack album. So there's going to be what, like two, three Tom Petty songs on there, and the rest is going to be instrumental, which is fine. I like instrumental music, but so I never picked it up, never really listened to it. Then when I did, I discovered Walls, and I discovered, this cover of Lucinda Williams Changed the Locks and Climb That Hill and Zero from Outer Space. It's such a great album. Why do you think it is a little bit overlooked? Is it just the soundtrack thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess so. I mean, I know that movie wasn't like overwhelmingly popular or anything.
Yeah,
Maybe if it was, had been a bigger movie, then it would have been more like, you know, his Into the Wild instead of, it's
yeah.
just I don't I got to be honest. I've never seen the movie. I've always been
No.
curious to. One of these days I will. But I think that's the record where he's the least petty. I mean, he stretches out the most into songs that would not be like, I don't know. I've never heard anything like some of those songs on that record before.
Yeah.
He's because it is a different thing. It's a soundtrack, I guess, and he's going for a certain aesthetic and I mean, grew up fast. Like he would never write that. That's not a Tom
No.
Petty song. It's just not. But it is because he wrote it, and it's
Yeah.
great. It's great, but it's just so out there. It's so different, and it's just Full Moon Fever is him at his just most three chord
Yeah.
simple, simple perfect gem, and then that one is his least petty record that he's ever made.
And I think one of the ones he didn't, again, reading files, it wasn't one that he was enamored of once it was finished. And I think because it was, there was a lot of external, it wasn't just the band making a record. There was, you got director pressure, and obviously because it needs to fit within the theme of the film.
Yeah.
But again, what comes out the other end is fantastic. Now, what did you think of the Angel Dream Redux when they re-released it and sort of, they pared down the track listing? They took out some of the, they took out Airport and a bunch of stuff that was on the Wildflower sessions, and then they added in, I think it was 13 Days, 105 Degrees. Was it One Life's Little Mysteries? Was that on there? Or there's three songs they added in. What did you think of that? Because
Yeah,
it
I mean,
reimagines the whole thing, right?
to me, as long as you don't, it's just like George Lucas. Do whatever you want with Star Wars, but don't make it so we can't find the original anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like that, as long as I still have my CD of She's the One, or that it's still available in its original form, then I think it's
Yeah.
great. It's great to do to re-explore,
Yeah.
to do different things, to put out those demos and outtakes and stuff like that nobody would care about except for real fans, and
Yeah.
that's who it's for. Like, I don't think I don't like it when someone just puts together a new, here's another greatest hits with songs you've already heard that we're just trying to sell you.
Yeah.
But when it's an exploration, a deeper exploration or whatever, then or even if it's something that the artist themselves say, I like this better than the way it
Yeah.
was, just like George Lucas. Fine, good.
Yeah.
but like, why can't I find the original Star Wars anymore? It's annoying, right?
It was it was the same thing when Let It Be came out when they released the sort of the stripped down version of Let It
Yeah,
Be Naked, I think it was called. Fantastic. But I
yeah,
wouldn't want, yeah, like you said, I wouldn't want the original cut to go away because they're part of your DNA. And I think, I just wish they'd release that thing, re-release it on vinyl. We just got Mojo re-released on vinyl.
right.
She's the one is, Canadian, it's upwards of $100 minimum before
Yeah,
shipping. So it's like,
yeah,
get that one back on yellow vinyl, please. That would be good.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it just, yeah, it really did resonate, and and I wish that I'd heard more of those songs live. He didn't tend to play
Yeah.
them too much. I think, I probably, Walls I've heard several times live,
Yeah.
and maybe Climb That Hill once, and that's about it. Um,
Yeah, I don't think good points. I'd never actually thought about that, but
yeah, I don't know if I could guess. You could go on to Satellite FM and see if he's ever done some of those songs.
California, maybe that's probably popped up, maybe
Yeah,
I think, but
probably.
yeah,
Eh,
hope you never Zero from Outer Space. I don't think ever did grow up fast. I don't think you could do live really in a Heartbreaker set, right? It'd be a weird
yeah,
sort of down. It'd be a weird lull.
right. And I don't remember him doing one of those things like he did with Last DJ, where he did a few shows where they played it from front to back
Yeah,
live. I don't recall that having been the case for that one. I could be wrong. So
yeah, agreed.
yeah.
Okay, question 2: Mudcrutch or Traveling Wilburys?
Oh well, I mean, come on. Like the Traveling Wilburys is anyone's like rock and roll wet dream, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't really matter whether it's good or not.
Yeah,
And it was, those are cool records. Uh, but it's just like one of those things where you would fantasize about, oh man, what if but that would never happen.
yeah,
But like, no, here it is. I just think that doing that kind of thing is such a gift to your fans.
yeah,
Um, of all of those acts, Dylan and the Beatles and Harrison, and it's so, and the fact that they came away with two or three or four all-time classics is you would
absolutely.
hope. I mean, you would hope they would. Good God. But like you could also see that just not being the case, and that they're just sort of novelty records, and that's that. But I
Yeah,
don't think they are novelty records.
or the again, I mean, had the egos got in the way and it didn't work, you would have forgiven it because like you've got five guys who were
Right.
again just Hall of Fame, nothing to prove to anyone. They didn't need to do that. They've got no one's saying Jeff Lynne's kind of getting a little bit staid now, or Petty's kind of no. These are guys at the top of the game, but they get together and it's that love of music again. It's what we talked about, right? Musicians jamming. George Harrison and Tom Petty getting the ukuleles out at 2 o'clock in the morning in his house and just playing. That's what
Right.
that's what music should be, and they
Yeah.
get that comes across that fun and light side of it really comes across in both of those records. More so in the
Totally.
first one, I think, but
Yeah, and it wasn't even a practical band where they were like,
no.
okay, well, one of us is a drummer and one of us is a bass player and one of us is, there's that great photo where they've all got their Gretsch guitars in their
Yeah.
hand around that tree or whatever, and it's like, no, there's too many guitars
But
for sure,
yeah,
and too many singers, and
let's get
that's cool.
let's get Keltner. We'll just bring Jim Keltner in, and it'll be fine. He'll do a good job.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess I better give it to Wilburys, but yeah, the Mudcrutch songs are good.
Yeah.
I like them. Um, and there's some different sides of his sound. It's very simple stuff,
Yeah.
but it brings some new dimension too, but
Agreed.
not like the Wilburys.
Yeah, I mean, I was such a Beatles fan, so anything that Harrison did, and my dad was such a Dylan fan. I wasn't as big a Dylan fan at the time. Of course, growing up in England, I knew Jeff Lynne. Everyone knew Jeff Lynne from ELO and all sorts of other
Right.
projects. And then Roy Orbison was just a voice out of that just comes from a different planet. That voice. So and Roy Orbison was at that level like Elvis almost, where he's
Right.
never going to be a band with anyone,
Right.
but they get Roy Orbison in there, so it's just crazy.
Yeah, you hear his voice suddenly appear, and it's
Oh
just
my
like this
God.
wash of like OMG,
Yeah.
from a different planet, and from a different era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they mixed it so well. Okay, so if you could join the Heartbreakers on stage for one song, what would it be? And would you play and sing, or would you just play or sing?
Well, like many musicians, my number one goal when I play live is just not to screw up in a situation like that. So I guess I got to just go with Jammin' Me. At least I know it.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've played it many times. I can do the backing vocal. I'm gonna play it safe and go with what I know, so that I don't make an ass out of myself.
What do you think of Let Me Up I've Had Enough generally as an album?
What's that?
Let Me Up I've Had Enough as an album. So Jamming Me sort of was the single, and it did hit, I think it hit number one on the rock chart. But otherwise, that album was a bit of a not a well, it was a flop commercially. It didn't do well commercially, and creatively, I think it was that bridging point between the disaster that Southern Accents was on the sort of production side, and then getting into Full Moon Fever. But it's this weird space in the catalog where it doesn't seem to fit in either camp.
Yeah, no, that's right. It seems like an earlier record in my mind than it was. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that strange little kind of bridge record between. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Kind of like reminds me of like Hearts and Bones of Paul Simon. It's like this
yeah,
strange little record, like right in between stuff that was very distinct and had a lot of, hits and blah blah blah.
yeah,
And then you've got this like thing that's like good. It's good and it's overlooked. And I can't say it's a record I listen to a whole lot, is the
yeah,
truth of the matter. Yeah. Even to this day, like, I came in to him at Full Moon Fever
yeah.
and beyond, and those are the ones I do tend to listen to more often. I don't actually listen to his earlier records all that frequently, which I should,
Yeah.
because they're great. Yeah.
When I've said this lots on the cast too, but I do think that there is a difference between the records that come out after you become a fan of an artist and their back catalogue. Even a catalogue as rich as Petty's, when you're waiting for that new record to come out and you hear it for the first time and you're part of everyone listening to it for the first time, your relationship to that music is it's just a little bit different, right? It's a little bit different, a little bit more special, I think.
Yeah, yeah, especially when it's someone that's is a vital active musician at that time,
Yeah.
as opposed to discovering a band that has been defunct for ages or whatever. Then you might just sort of jump
Yeah.
into every part of that band, or and certainly there's some bands that I can't tell you if something is the 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't know. Like I'm not familiar enough with their
Yeah.
with their I might be familiar with their catalog, but I can't tell you what came first. Sometimes the recording quality gives it away, of course.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't. Like, you could play me 10 Elvis Costello songs. I can't tell you which one came out before which one. Like, I know them all. I like
Neither
them,
can
but
I.
I'm not, I don't know. I don't know I don't know the eras,
Yeah.
or what they mean. I just
Yeah,
know
definitely.
here's 10 good songs. But Petty, yeah, definitely someone that I'd have this distinct, you know, thing in my mind of
Yeah.
which era is which. And sometimes it's just based on fandom, and sometimes it's based on on more than that. Like, it's not just perception.
Yeah.
Like a band like U2. I mean, everything changed when Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois came in the picture. It's not coincidence that
Yeah.
my first exposure to them happened to be right in that era. They really are, fundamentally different records.
A
And I'd
different
say the same of Petty,
yeah, different
with
bands sonically. I mean, Boy and War to Actung Baby, Joshua Tree. I mean, there's you wouldn't think that, I mean, apart from Bono's voice being very distinctive,
right.
musically, if you took the vocal out, you wouldn't think that's the same band at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the Stones, who just
Keep
they're
trucking.
just the Stones, and that's that.
You need the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so who would be your dream opening act at a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers concert?
Oh, well, I think I saw it actually. Most of the time, I'm not excited about seeing an opening act.
Yeah.
Um, most of it, just because you're choosing to go to the headliner, and the opening act is whoever they might be. Let's see, like when I found out that Mike Campbell was the Who's opening act, I was stoked.
Yeah.
So I've seen various bands open for Petty, and it was all fine. I saw the Jayhawks, that was good. I
Yeah.
saw Steve Winwood, that was good. Of course, that's a kind of a bucket list guy. But I don't remember what tour it was. It must have been around 2005. The Black Crowes opened for him, and that's a band that I love and I had never seen before. So I
Yeah.
was actually stoked about that. And they were awesome. Like that is a hell of a show, and his
Yeah.
voice is just like right there. Like I could he was a singer that I thought to myself, I could see him not being that good live.
Yeah.
But wow. It was great. So like that's a great pairing. And that's a band that doesn't have to be like Steve Winwood, obviously. They don't
Yeah.
have to be opening for anybody. Like the
100%.
Black Crowes is a headline rock and roll act, and they do it because they love Petty, probably, and
Yeah.
they're like, well, let us be a part of that. Absolutely. So that was one double pairing that it's not going to get any better than that. That was perfect.
I've always said that. I mean, apart from, if I could sound like anyone, if I could sing like anyone,
Yeah.
you kind of think, well, Freddie Mercury is my favorite vocalist of all time, but I don't know if I'd want the pressure of that voice.
Right.
Chris Robinson, I'd kill to have his voice because that guy can sing the type of music that I love and I love singing. He's the best at it, as far as I'm concerned. And the Crows are again a criminally underrated
Yeah.
rock and roll band. Like no one
Yeah.
really talks about them when they're talking about great American rock and roll bands, and it's a shame because they are amazing. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, and they got better as they went on. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, that first record is a seminal album, but two, three, four, these are great records that are more interesting and creative. And
yeah,
yeah, that's funny too. That's right. Like, if I think about my favorite singers, that's not necessarily the voice that I'd want though, because
yeah,
I want a voice that works with what I do. So
yeah,
I wouldn't pick the Freddie Mercury's either, or certain people that it's like you would kill for that voice, but I don't think it would fit in with my music. So maybe I'd go
yeah.
with someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can have Freddie Mercury's voice, you also need to be the creative brain who can write something like "Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy," which I'm not. So,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's certain people that I might, if I had to trade my voice for, it might not, some of my top choices are not my favorite bands or artists, but it's like, I could see that
yeah.
voice working for me.
Okay, who's your favorite band member other than Tom? Always assuming that Tom is your favorite member of the Heartbreakers, which I've.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, sure, but I guess I'll go with the guy that I have met several times. That's only fair. So Steve
Yeah,
Veroni, let's go with him. But at the end of the day, in terms of musical contribution, it really is this little collective that
yeah,
that everybody occupies their place and does their thing. It really is a band, and I don't have I don't have a favorite. That question is good for people who have a favorite Beatle, have a
yeah.
favorite Stone, but I guess I don't. Uh,
Okay,
I never force myself to think that way, but
yeah,
but I'll go Ferroni because that's the easy answer.
awesome. It's a good answer too, though. Like I said, I mean, you've met the guy, hung with him, you've played with him, so of course you're gonna say Steve.
Yeah,
If you could go to see any Tom Petty concert from history that you weren't at, which one would it be?
yeah. Um, I guess I would go to the one that I'm, kicking myself for not having gone to because, eh, parking's a pain and the tickets are expensive and I'll just catch him next time. So I guess I would go to his last show
Yeah,
at the Hollywood Bowl, which I should have, but didn't. The last show I saw was the Hypnotic Eye tour when Winwood was opening, and
yeah.
for whatever reason I didn't go catch him at the Bowl in 2017, I guess. Yeah, so I would do that. I would go to the last show.
I think that's been, if it's not been picked by most people, it's at least been name checked by pretty much everyone I've asked the question to, just exactly because of that, right? Because you don't know the magnitude of what that last gig actually means. That it's the last time we get to see him, and so shortly after, right, we lose him. But it's
Yeah,
that sort of that tension between those two events. I don't think we'll ever lose that as fans, right? It's going to be, you would love to see just that one last time. But having said that, like if you go and you don't know, without that knowledge, maybe it wouldn't be quite the same.
maybe, but the thing is, he's always great. And what's the thing about him is, it's not like, I mean, obviously with a lot of bands, you're gonna go to an early show.
Yeah,
Um, you know, from the Who to Van Halen. You want to see these guys when they are just kicking ass
Yeah.
and jumping but Petty's not about that. It's not. I don't think he lost anything in getting older. And again, I would put the Stones in that same category. They're
Yeah.
not. They weren't, you know, leaping off of risers
Right.
and pulling off heroics of one kind or another. It's just about the music and the vibe. And so for Petty, I don't feel this great need to go back and see an early show like I
Yeah.
would pick for so many other bands,
Although
um,
although
who
Petty
I
and
didn't have the opportunity to see when they
yeah.
were, you know, in their younger phase.
Although Heartbreakers and Blondie at the Whiskey, that would have been something. LA debut for both bands, like holy crap. And I've never been to the Whiskey, and again, it's a bucket list venue, but I can only imagine the energy in that room when you get sort of a fresh raw band like that must be incredible.
It's a cool place to see a show, and it's funny. The band I was in, you know, quite a while ago, we had this guitarist who was from Tennessee, and he idolized Guns N' Roses. Like
Okay.
that was his. And he was moving back to Tennessee. He was going to marry his high school sweetheart, all this stuff. And he's like, before I go, can we please play the Whiskey? So I'm like, yeah, all right. Fuck it, let's do it. So, you know, you have to buy tickets and you have to sell them yourself. It's a big pain in the ass,
Okay.
but I'm like, all right, let's do it. And it was, oh, that's a great place to play.
So you played on stage at the Whiskey. I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that again, I mean, I don't know. I think the weight of the history of that place would be maybe a little bit too much for me to actually stand on stage and sing there, you know.
Yeah, I know. That's right. Yeah, well, yeah, and obviously the Doors cutting their teeth there,
Yeah.
and it was fun. It was a good spot to play. Yeah,
Super cool, man. Okay, so question 7. Walls Circus or Walls number 3? And as a She's the One fan, you're the perfect guy to ask this to. Which is your favorite version of that song?
that's right. Well, yeah, I mean, I'll go with with Circus. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Because you know the other one sounds more like just what Petty would do,
Yeah.
whereas Circus is a very interesting sonic thing that's a little bit different from the norm, which is what that record, you know, is to me. And I would say the exact same thing about Angel Dream. That the first version, the one with the weird percussion and stuff like that,
Right.
it's not just the straight delivery, is my preferred version of that one too. Yeah, I just think they're cooler arrangements.
It took me a while to get into Circus just because but the first time I heard 3, because you know, like you said, that's the way he wrote it for sure, right? Because he's written that on his Martin. He's sitting there and he's strumming an acoustic guitar, so it's got that sort of singer-songwriter feel.
Yeah,
But Circus has just got so much swing to it. Like it swings so hard, that version of it, and it's got that lazy tempo to it because it's a
yep,
little bit slower, and it's got that grungy thing in there, and you get all the, it's such a
that
cool,
piano and
just fantastic, yeah.
yeah,
And the video's great too. It's a killer video. So
yeah, yeah,
and Lindsay's on there as well. So you got to love a little bit of Lindsey Buckingham. So
absolutely.
okay, this has been my favorite question to ask, and especially when you're speaking to musicians because it throws up some really interesting combinations. So no pressure.
Yeah.
If you could pick any artist to cover any Tom Petty song, who would it be, and which song would they cover?
Well, that's a very fine question. Um, Well, I guess, you know, the thing about Tom Petty is that everyone loves him or they're just not familiar with him.
Yeah.
You know, he's a very beloved character. So it's not like you need to like convince people that, oh, you need to like Tom Petty, you need to like his songs. Anyone who's familiar with him, they already do.
Right.
So I guess the question is, how do you make sure his songs continue to the next generation of music listeners, especially as someone who is unfortunately deceased, which makes it harder.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, is there another answer to that question other than Taylor Swift? I don't think so. so,
Ooh.
so I got to go with Taylor Swift. I mean,
Wow. Okay. And what's
the
she
person
covering
with
then?
the largest audience on planet Earth. I figure if she covers a Petty song, then there's a lot of people who just got exposed, you know, quite possibly first exposure.
Yeah.
But what song? I suppose she could do just about anything, but like what actually sounds like her? Um, Higher Place.
Okay.
I could see that being like an early Taylor Swift song.
Okay. I mean, I
It's
don't
got
listen
kind
to
of
it.
a cute. It's like a cute song.
Right. And
Super
it's
simple.
simple. I was just going to say, yeah, simple enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to disparage her musical ability, but
No, not at all.
yeah,
If to do that would be to disparage Petty's musical ability,
yeah,
just because someone's wheelhouse is simple is a gift, but you never you know if you hear a band and the playing is very simple and you always put your money down that everyone in that band could outplay
yeah,
anybody you know, but it's
100%.
not what they're doing in
Yeah,
that particular,
yeah.
so yeah,
That's a really cool answer because no one's ever
Swifties
taken,
unite around Petty.
yeah, no one's ever taken that approach to say like, oh, you know, if we're trying to keep the legacy alive and keep the music alive,
Yeah,
how do that? Well, yeah, I mean, Taylor Swift is she's got like 120 million monthly
yeah,
listeners on
just
Spotify, something insane. It's
beyond
just,
massive. Yeah.
yeah, very cool. So, what song do you most frequently recommend to people who don't know Tom's music? Which again is a bit of a weird question because it sort of depends on the person to a degree. I know, but
Yeah, that's right. And again, yeah, everyone who knows him likes it. Yeah, so if someone just hadn't heard of him before, I guess my instinct would always be to recommend an album over just a song,
right,
but that's an old way of thinking, isn't it? Thanks to, Spotify and random play and so forth like that. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I guess if someone hears Free Fallin' and says, I don't like that at all, then I have a name I can scratch out of my phone book and not worry about again. So I guess that's as good an introduction as anything.
yeah,
And if they like that, then well, like with any artist, there's a whole world of possibility
yeah,
after that. And that's the fun part about the Apple Music and the Spotify, for better or worse, wherever you land on it as a musician, as a listener, or anything else,
yeah,
to be able to do that deep dive anytime you want is cool. So
yeah,
that seems like a good gateway song. But if I know somebody is less of a singer-songwritery person and more of a rock person, then of course maybe I would suggest something else. But I'll go with Free Fallin' for the purposes of this conversation.
yeah. And again, in one of those songs that you've heard it a million times, and yet it's one of those very few songs that I will never turn off because
Right.
every time, and again, talk about simplicity, three chords, same repeated pattern, verse and chorus is the same pattern. There's no musical bridge. It's just that snare roll. Like it's the essence of simplicity, and it's the essence of when Petty did that well. You just don't do it any better than this song.
Right.
Learning to Fly would be another one, right? Where it's the same pattern with no real bridge or break, and there's no middle eight. So, but when you do it, when you can write it that well, of course, it's going to be stratospheric.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's stuff that most people don't think about, including even musicians. I don't necessarily think about. It doesn't occur to me that there's no middle eight, no bridge, no,
Yeah,
no whatever, and unless I for some reason am thinking about it. And that
yeah,
or of course, if you're going to cover it and you're charting it out for your
yeah,
band, then then you see exactly what is or isn't there.
yeah,
But yeah, again, doing so much with so little is one of his trademarks. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, last question in the 10. Describe Tom Petty in 3 words.
Okay. Um, Simple, humble legend.
Legend and genius come up all the time for a reason, right? So I think humble.
Yeah.
I think humble too. I think humble crops up. I should do a little. I should do a little pie chart, a little hotspot thing, or what do they call them? A word cloud. I should do.
Right. Right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's that's what, you know, when I started to consider him an influence, it was the challenge of how do you convey so much using as little as you can?
Yeah.
Which was a totally different, approach from so many of the people that I was influenced by and still am
Yeah.
before that, who have such complicated,
Yeah.
I'm a huge Billy Joel guy, and just
Yeah.
like the way he puts together chords is unlike anyone else, but it's not simple. You would never accuse it of being simple,
Yeah.
or even the Doors. I mean, what are there, like 9 different chords in the first 10 seconds of Light My Fire, I would say. um, Such a different approach
Yeah.
to music from Petty, who yes, there's plenty of 3-quarter people out there, but nobody like him. And
I'm better.
obviously, I'm not accusing him of being a 3-chord artist, because he's got such a wide range
Yep.
of what he can do. But simplicity as a goal, and I like complexity.
Yeah.
I was raised on complexity, and I think it's a great thing. But so is simplicity.
Yeah. It's funny, on another podcast I do, we just finished up talking about Phil Collins' era Genesis. So you talk about prog. I mean, everyone forgets that Trick of the Tail, Wind and Wuthering, then there were three, Duke. These are prog records, and Genesis were never simple. So exactly,
Yeah,
exactly what you said. I
and
mean,
that's another one of
yeah.
those bands that was a massive influence when I was in high school, and on our high school band. We would,
Yeah.
I mean, from the whole spectrum, from their first record to their last record, we were pretty obsessed with them, and so definitely, Steve Hackett was a big influence on my playing, and yeah. But it's a different challenge. How do you make something complex and not sound like it?
Yeah.
It's just the exact opposite of the Petty style thing. How do you make something simple and not sound like it? Because that's really it, isn't it? You before you pick up the guitar to check out the chords, you want to think to yourself, oh, that's more complicated than it is, or that's simpler than it is. It's only when you Billy Joel's a master of that. You sit down and think like, oh, no problem.
I can play this.
I don't even know what that first chord is, as it turns out, or like, how did he voice that? Wow, there's a lot of chords in this song. Like,
yeah,
how could it be? It just sounds so simple.
No, I would never want either, right? You want all the shades of the musical spectrum. Like I wouldn't want to get rid of the simple music. I wouldn't want to get rid of the complex music. I want it all in there. And I want it all taking up different spaces in what I want from music. So
yeah, and that's why nobody that I know of likes just one artist, because variety is the spice of life, I suppose. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.